we are going to cover the CASC, so fall meetings that happened, starting with the CASC meeting. Then we have the EDUCAUSE meeting. Then we have the other meetings like TechEx, Internet2 TechEx, and then we also are hoping to cover any other meetings that are not included here. And we have invited some speakers to do lightning talks, but if you feel that there was some other conference that you attended that you would like to share information about, then please feel free to do so. And the focus is on like why you attended, not on a summary of the agendas, so that it's helpful for others also if they wish to go join the next round of those meetings. The next thing I wanted to point out that we have a CARC code of conduct, so it's listed in the call doc. Make sure that we adhere to that. And then I'm going to invite our speakers for today. We have, I believe we had requested some speakers to join. I don't see.
Yeah, I didn't
Jim
actually
particularly
write them all in there. I think we had, let me see.
I think Jim was going to do.
Jim Williams was going to, yes. Well, looks like Jim didn't make it. He was going to do the CASC thing. Is there somebody who wants to speak about CASC a little bit? I know we've got
Catherine is there. Maybe Catherine,
yeah, Catherine's here.
Talk about CASC.
All right. What was there a list of topics that I should cover, or
sorry to put you on the spot? Yeah, it's really well, we were as Amit mentioned, it's you know, a general sense of the kind of content and value of the event, not a summary of the presentation or agendas. You know, why do folks attend, or why do they send their team members to the event, and what kind of discussions happen there and things like that.
Okay. So if you're not familiar with the Coalition for Academic Scientific Computation, we're a institutional membership-based organization focused on research computing and data, and a number of directors of those data centers, and of course the national supercomputing centers are involved in the organization. We have 104 members now, and this is the fall meeting and the spring meeting are an opportunity for the CASC members to convene to talk about you know, topics of the day. You know, of course, you know, you can pretty much name some of the common themes that we're dealing with. You know, we have a positions committee, and the papers that were presented in this meeting focused on research data management, as well as a strategy, not necessarily a positions paper, more of an internal strategy on research ecosystem inclusivity, which is now leading to an inclusivity session at SC23 on Wednesday afternoon. So trying to find ways that we can broaden our membership and provide value add to a greater expanse of members. And many of the meetings, we have a number of federal sponsors who present to the membership. So we normally have NSF SIZE and NSF OAC. This was actually Margaret Martinosi's last meeting. So that was our last chance to see the tree, at least for the time being. She likes to present. And we had Katie Antipus, unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but you know, many of the topics that we discuss are brought up by the membership and are of interest to them. So they you know, they do change over the course of the meetings, and it really is an opportunity for members to network with each other. And when I've had the membership interviews, that is exactly what they want to do, is share their issues and their common problems with other members of the community. So there's a lot of informal conversation that takes place during the meeting, and that is actually the advantage that members have indicated is what they really glean from each meeting. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and if there are questions at the end, I'll be more than happy to talk about whatever anyone wants to about that.
Were there any surprises or new conversations that seem to pop up a lot at CASC this year?
I think the big surprise was that we actually had federal sponsors at the meeting, since it was right before what we thought was an impending government shutdown. So we had a plan B, a final day, and we didn't have to engage that. So now we are ahead of the game for the spring meeting. If there are others, it probably would be others that were at the meeting that could provide that answer, because I was so focused on the operations that I didn't really. I think the big surprise was that for me was that we did get a lot of participation in the research ecosystem inclusivity paper. That was welcomed. But we ended up we could have spent all day on that, of course, and I think what we realize is that we are still at the initial. We have a long way to go. I think all of us do when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that was one of the most spirited sessions of the meeting. I don't know if there were any other surprises. Maybe someone else who's. I know that Jay Shree was in for one of the days, and Dana was in for the whole thing. Not to put you on the spot, Dana. I know Jennifer participated also for. I could see her up on the Zoom wall that we had.
I attended remotely. One of the things that was another lively discussion there was the data management positions paper, yes. And it just essentially the complexity of complying with the data sharing or public access required for federally funded research is just unfunded. And so even powerful R1 institutions are having trouble supporting this so quickly. And just because I think part of it is, it came as we're all rebuilding after the pandemic, and it's just, there's not many institutions that are well organized. It's requiring us to work better with libraries, and it's just difficult, and it is expensive to support because people need information, they need support, they need to know how to create a data management plan, and then enact that.
Thanks, Jackie. I didn't see you there. That's great. And then Susan, I think you participated in part of it as well.
Yeah, like Jackie, I was able to participate some remotely. And so, I second everything Jackie said about the data management RDM stuff. Obviously, I'm going to second partnering with the libraries for that type of stuff as well. But it just being a huge challenge for institutions since it is unfunded, and trying to figure out what the community resources need to be and should be, and what the institutions need to take on. It's just, I think it's a massive challenge for all of us.
And Dana was an invited guest for our meeting.
Yeah, I was delighted since I used to be a member when I was at Oklahoma State and got to come back and visit. So it was nice. I really enjoyed getting to hear Lynn Parker talk, who is one of the co-chairs of the NAIR task force, and report on what's going on there, which I'm still trying to figure out. And of course, a lot of what CASC is to me is, I know Jackie and Susan were there remotely, and Jackie, I loved your talk. But just kind of like this meeting, but in person with a bunch of people and sharing what's going on and what keeps you up at night and things like that. And so it's helpful. And then of course me with my Internet2 hat on, trying to get everybody to help me figure out what I should do with my role at Internet2 to help the RCD community, right? So my selfish motive.
Yeah, I definitely miss coming to CASC. It's one of the things that I miss about not being at Berkeley anymore, is being able to come and see everybody there. You mentioned a couple of the papers. Are these going to be made available? Will they be on the CASC site, or where can the rest of the community benefit from all your thinking on this?
Yes, that's a good question. I'm meeting with the lead, that's Joe Hetrick from Iowa, and I wanted to get the strategy in place before we even got to the fall meeting, and didn't get that. So once it's available, I'm definitely going to be sharing that. And the other thing that came out of that we were I'm sure to the point of irritation, we were asking members to go back to a 2013 survey that was conducted by Nick Parente, and we added a few questions, and they're processing that right now. We should have some answers by SC.
Cool. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm. So thank you all for helping me get my memory banks back in order.
Well, thank you for being willing to be put on the spot.
One of the things that I'll mention about those papers is that a writer was hired, and
Yes.
she talked to a bunch of us that were on those positions committees and wrote the put everything together, and it was wonderful because the paper actually happened and we could react to it. And it was more succinct than I think a lot of us would have been able to do, because I think there's just so much complexity and so much that we each want to say, and so much that's unique to each of our institutions. And I thought that I think her name was Fran.
Yes.
Did a great job in terms of creating a digestible deliverable that we could share out, that really talked about the pains of data management support.
So Patrick, I'll figure out a way that I can share that post haste, because it was one of those, it's been a thorn in my side, because I wanted to get it ready to go to be distributed at the fall meeting.
Sure. Well, as soon as you have anything, let us know. We'd be happy to help publicize it. I know a lot of people will be interested. So
thank you.
Great. Well, we do have both Jackie and Susan here, so why don't we jump into and hear about EDUCAUSE?
Jackie, do you want to start, or would you like to
start, Susan?
Okay, well, I'll start with Patrick's first question about sort of why we encourage folks to attend. I think with the research in terms of research computing and data, so I'm co-leading the community group, then we're going to be partnering for the December call. Jackie's a past co-lead on that community group. And, we talk a lot about strategy and policy within that community as well. And so I think attending the EDUCAUSE, it's the EDUCAUSE annual meeting. It's kind of a smaller group that's focused on research computing. The talks, there are fewer RCD talks than other tracks at the conference, but we're hoping to increase those. So I encourage you to join the community group and think about participating in future meetings if you're able. This year we did have, I think 6 or 7 total sessions that were classified as research computing and data. There are also some other sessions sort of classified as strategy that would be of interest to folks as well. Some research data specific types of things. And we think it's a great opportunity. We get our community group together, we hear from them, they ask them to help us steer the next year of what they would like to see from us, what types of call topics, other activities that we can help facilitate. I think, being placed within EDUCAUSE, I'm thinking about how can we utilize EDUCAUSE and its infrastructure. We talk a lot about how the CIOs are there, and so communicating with the CIOs and the VPRs, and sort of, where's the sweet spot that we can use, because we get access to them at those conferences as well, and we can educate them and hear from them. So that's sort of the value of that particular annual conference. And Jackie won a great award this year. I'll let her talk about that, but she's a rising star for EDUCAUSE and doing great things with EDUCAUSE community. So Jackie, I'll pass to you.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Susan. So yeah, I was honored with the Rising Star Award, along with another person from Berkeley, West Johnson. But kind of building on Susan's, what she mentioned, why I think it's important to attend EDUCAUSE is that, again, there are CIOs there. So it is an opportunity to understand how CIOs or other IT leaders are thinking, what they're concerned about, understanding that they are not just, why they may or may not be paying attention to research. It is a great way to build leadership skills, understanding how to better hire, recruit, retain staff. The conference provides a lot of talks around workforce, and it's something that I think is missing in a lot of the research computing and data specific meetings and conferences. I think we're getting better at it, but for me, there's just so much more at EDUCAUSE that is readily available. And they also have training programs. So they have new manager training programs. They have a senior leadership program that one I think is mostly online. And really being connected into other universities at a different level than what we can get at PERC, SC, or CASC or other meetings. So I think, again, the research computing sessions, the ones that that I was involved in with Susan and Catherine, Kurt Hilligas, Sarvani, and Claire, the ones that we did around research computing were really talking to people who were maybe not quite research computing focused, or more in the beginning of their journeys. And so that I think is the audience. It's not really like similar to what you would give at PERC. And then the stuff that you want to attend at EDUCAUSE, if you know what you're doing in research computing, maybe those research computing talks aren't for you. Go to those professional skills development, or what, if you want to call them soft skills, but they are critical skills in order to be able to advocate for the resources that we need, to understand the IT landscape at our institutions, what are on like the CIO's mind, or whoever, chancellor, whatever position of leadership, and also understanding their challenges, because they are going through so much leadership change. I think that every university has had just such turnover at the VP or president level. So really understanding and seeing how you fit into this giant puzzle at your institution, I think, is really helpful at EDUCAUSE. And the energy, I think, is really nice. It is really about bettering yourself and moving forward professionally, that I think is really energizing. I had one more thing that I wanted to mention, but I can't think of it. But if it comes to me, I'll come off mute.
Thanks, Jackie. Actually, that was actually very clarifying, in the sense like getting the clear distinction between who attends EDUCAUSE versus CASC and PERC and so on. That actually helps. Personally, I have never attended EDUCAUSE, and that gives me that perspective of, it's the interaction with the CIOs, and also the focus is on educational aspect of research computing and data. So that kind of gives a better understanding of what EDUCAUSE would be.
So your comment made me remember. So they got 9, I think, proposals that were research computing and data focused. So the reason why the numbers are low is because we aren't submitting to EDUCAUSE. And so it really is about us needing to submit material and content about research computing. And it really is an opportunity to tell CIOs what we're struggling with, why it's important. And, I think that we can kind of be in our own vacuum and preach to the choir all we want. But if we aren't in the spaces that our leadership is in, it's like, it does just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be kind of like, I think we need to challenge ourselves and get in those spaces.
Yeah, Catherine, please go ahead.
Yes, I want to emphasize what Jackie said, because this is my first time at EDUCAUSE, and I definitely see ways that the RCD community could have a greater influence, and we're in conversations with Susan Grajek and others at EDUCAUSE on ways to work together, especially on what you mentioned in terms of leadership development and training. So I think there are definitely opportunities where we could be able to collaborate in this area.
All right, thanks so much. Any questions, comments, or any other, anyone else attended EDUCAUSE? They want to chime in? I guess if not, then Dana, I hope I don't, you don't mind. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot with the update on Internet2 TechEx.
I'm happy to. But first I want to say, Jackie and Susan and others, that was a great pitch for EDUCAUSE. So Internet2 Technology Exchange happened, I think, 2 weeks before EDUCAUSE, maybe. So who goes there is the first question, right? So when the numbers are like, I don't know, 700, 800, so about PERC size, so not as big as EDUCAUSE. So there's actually several groups who use that as their technology exchange community. Most of these will come as no surprise. One is the advanced networking community, so your campus networking people, the ones like the engineers. This is not the CIO level, this is the people that are the technologists doing the work and sharing about all of that. So campus and regional network people in the networking track. There's trust and identity. So thank your identity providers on campus and all the people who help you with InCommon and EduRoam. And they have a cool unconference that they plan today. And I think I saw Jim on the call, Jim Basney. So if you want to tell about that a little bit, it's really cool. I did go to one session where they were talking about SSO for, plugging into HPC clusters and how to get around some of those things, especially when APIs are involved. But anyway, but international groups talking about those sorts of things. Cloud. So, Internet2 has the Net Plus group and class and things like that. So people get together. It's still predominantly, enterprise focused, but tight relationship with the EDUCAUSE cloud computing community group. I don't think there's any daylight between the Internet2 cloud group and the EDUCAUSE cloud group. And then what else? Security. And then we did have a research engagement track at TechEx this year. Jim Wilgenbush at University of Minnesota and his whole team were the stars of that track. They gave several presentations talking about that. And I think I want to kind of repeat a lot of what Jackie said. It's not going to be about professional development, but it is about crossing those boundaries with the people in your enterprise IT side who are doing the networking and the identity management and the cloud, the enterprise side of the cloud work, which, we need to work with to help our researchers when they do want to use the cloud, and trying to cross-pollinate how research computing connects with those groups, right? Because Internet2 traditionally focuses on those communities. And so just like with EDUCAUSE, I think there's opportunities there to bridge some of those gaps and expose those groups to what the research computing groups are up to, and vice versa. And then just while I have your ear, so the Internet2's other event is Community Exchange, and that happens in the spring. And that's the one that's more the C-level groups coming. And so that's when I'll also borrow Jackie's advice. And so one of the things I try to do there is get with the CIOs that go to that meeting and try to learn what their pain points are, especially when it comes to serving research, and let them know the things that we're doing here that they could leverage in case they want to help their campuses support research. So if anybody, and that one's in Chicago. So I really am looking for anybody in research computing who's willing to drive to be in Chicago in, I think, March and help with that effort. So please let me know. And I think that's about it. If you have questions, or if anybody else, I know there's a few other people on the call that were at TechEx, if you want to mention anything.
No, I'll add. I'm Jan Day. I'm with AWS. I attended TechEx this year and the year before, and I +1 to everything that you said, Dana. It's a great conference for doing that networking in hallways, learning from one another. And I actually spent a lot of time in the research engagement track because I wanted to listen and learn about what are the pain points, what are the areas of aspiration, and what are the strategies that are being employed within that community, and trying to just listen and learn and come back with that information to my team to just understand how can the cloud support that world and advance the work that each of those researchers and RCD professionals are doing. So I love the conference, and I'm really looking forward to the community exchange in the spring. I think that'll be equally as engaging.
Well, thanks, Jan, and you were critical to answering some questions in the research engagement track. Jim, you put your camera on.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I just want to give a +1 to the value of that unconference session around federated identity management that Dana mentioned. It's a very productive time. Some of those sessions we propose to really work in the details and work out what we're all going to implement over the next year. But there's also a nice set of sessions where somebody new says, I don't understand this this aspect of federated identity management. Could the experts please join my session and explain it to me? And I think those are some of the most valuable sessions.
Thanks, Jim.
Any other comments about TechEx? I think the next thing I had on my list was, Jim, thanks for volunteering to talk about trusted CI for this fall. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm Jim Basney from NCSA at the University of Illinois. And last week I was at the National Science Foundation Cybersecurity Summit, which is organized by Trusted CI. I'm the director of Trusted CI, so in terms of value of the event, I'm a bit biased, but hopefully this is still useful for you. So it's an annual hybrid event. And we had a record turnout this year, about 190 in person at Berkeley Lab, about 130 joined remote. The majority were first-time attendees, which was very exciting. And we also extended the meeting to 4 full days this year. In previous years, it was 2.5, and we had some good feedback on that. In terms of the content of the event, it's provided by the community. We have a call for submissions in the community. And that includes community presentations, workshops, trainings, and group meetings, like the Access Cybersecurity Group had their team meeting co-located with the event. All the slides are online already. Let me put the URL in the chat. And we'll be posting the videos very soon to YouTube. Why I think folks attend, probably number one is to meet with colleagues, have those good hallway conversations. We also have a number of interactive sessions about information sharing around cybersecurity for research computing, including some sessions where we can share confidential information. Those are not recorded and the content doesn't leave the room, but we can talk in detail about the threats that we're seeing and some of our challenges. I think for most attendees, cybersecurity is not their full-time job. And so there's a lot of discussion about how cybersecurity supports the research mission, how you balance the cybersecurity requirements and cybersecurity work with the other work that we all have to do. So lastly, what I think is best about the meeting, I think the student program is best about the meeting. It was, I really enjoyed meeting the students this year, like I do every year. All the students presented posters at the poster session and had a lot of good turnout with people asking the students questions about their early research. Having a meeting at Berkeley Lab, Northern California in October is very nice. So that was, we got some good comments on that. And then the co-located community meetings, I mentioned the access meeting. We also had a full day on Jupyter security, a full day on Zeek intrusion detection system training. So a lot of community provided content at the meeting. And that's my summary. Thanks.
So in terms of audience who attended, like was that a mix of like CISOs, CIOs, or like actual security engineers? So what kind of mix was there in terms of audience?
Security engineers, some CISOs, but like mostly CISOs for like NSF major facilities rather than campus CISOs. But there were definitely security engineers from campus and talking about how they're balancing their cybersecurity work for the campus enterprise versus supporting cybersecurity needs of research on campus. And then some cybersecurity researchers wanting to talk about how their new research results might get deployed as part of our cyber infrastructure, and then like I mentioned, a lot of students, which was really great.
I mean, I had a follow up on that. Like, was this mostly academia focused, or was there involvement from national labs or industry or?
It's focused on NSF cyber infrastructure, but there's a lot of collaboration across NSF and Department of Energy. And the fact that we had it at a Department of Energy lab this year at Berkeley Lab, I think really helped make those, or strengthen those connections between NSF and DOE. So we had lots of locals from Berkeley Lab or from other labs that joined us. So I would say that there wasn't much industry participation. It was really university, NSF, and DOE participation for the most part.
Thanks, Jim. So don't make me ask all the questions. If anyone else has the questions, comments? I think on my list, I have Henry to talk about Oklahoma Supercomputing Symposium, if he is willing to.
Sure, I'm happy to take a minute and talk about that. We had, I think, about 275 attendees for the day. Most of them not for the full day, in and out, but so we had, let me see if I can remember. We had Katie Antipas as our keynote speaker. She's the new head of the NSF's Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. Then we had, and I gave my annual State of the Center address for our supercomputing center as usual. We had Addison Snell from Intersect 360 Research talking about the state of the industry for high performance computing. We had Dan Stanzione talking about sort of developing new capabilities at the national level. And we had Li-Wen Chen from University of Houston Clear Lake talking about the intersection of quantum computing and AI. And I have to say that other than my own talk, which was a bit more internally focused, every speaker talked significantly about the intersection between high performance computing and AI/machine learning. That's very much on everyone's mind today. So every topic really ended up being, to a significant extent, a discussion of that issue. So it was actually, and by the way, this was completely not planned at all. We did not assign a theme for the Oklahoma Supercomputing Symposium. We never have. We did not ask people to talk about specific topics beyond something very general. And yet this is where everybody landed. So clearly this is very much on people's minds these days. It's a very successful event. We had great speakers as usual. So I was certainly very pleased with it. If anybody attended, you're welcome to provide feedback here.
Yeah, who all, I'm sure some of you folks, somebody here probably went. Let's hear from them.
I've been
If no
every
one-
year at this one because it was the same time as the CC Star PI meeting.
Yeah, that was a bit of an adventure for me because, first of all, I was on the organizing committee, not for the CC Star this year. I've been on that organizing committee in the past, but I was on the organizing committee for the cyber training meeting, which was held jointly with the CCSI meeting and was also the same day as the Oklahoma Supercomputing Symposium. So that last week of September was 2 PI meetings that I was supposed to attend that I could not attend because I was running the Oklahoma Supercomputing Symposium. And I ended up having to send a co-PI to each of those meetings because, of course, it's a requirement. It's mandatory that the team be represented at each of those meetings. And happily, I had co-PIs who volunteered to go, or at least were voluntold to go. No, historically, so I was asked, were any of the sessions for the Oklahoma Supercomputing Symposium recorded? No, historically, we've avoided doing that because we don't want our speakers to feel inhibited. And in the past, particularly with industry speakers, they've specifically asked not to be recorded. So rather than go through that rigmarole, we've just avoided recording the sessions.
So Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, so Henry, I was going to ask about, you talked about the intersection of HPC and AI, ML. Did anything come up about working with sensitive data?
Yeah, I mean, it was touched on, to be sure. I think there's a lot of interest in that topic right now. A lot of institutions are developing what I would refer to as legally regulated enclaves at various levels of intensity, let's say. So some people are going sort of full NIST 800-171. Some people are doing, say, just HIPAA, which is I believe, a little bit gentler than that. There are sort of various levels that you can achieve. At the CASC meeting in October, we heard from University of Florida talking about how they were, I think I understood, the very first research computing organization to undergo high trust. I'm not sure if the word certification is correct here, but at least the high trust process and official blessing from the high trust organization. So yes, there's an enormous amount of interest in that topic. It didn't get a huge amount of discussion at the symposium, but it did get some, yeah.
Thank you.
Henry, what are the things that you think are most distinctive or most valuable for people to show up to the symposium that are kind of different from the other conferences?
So it sort of depends on whether you look at the past or the future. So prior to COVID, through 2019, we did a pure on-site event. And so in the mornings, we would have plenaries, which would be typically major national folks. And then in the afternoons, we would have breakouts, which were typically regional presenters, as well as vendor sponsor presentations. And with COVID, of course, we had to move away from that. And so we completely changed the structure to be 100% national folks, where either their name or their position, title, and organization would be a draw, often because we didn't know the title of their talk until a day or two before the event. I think in some cases until the day of the event. And so we figured we would market it based on who the speakers were, not based on what they were going to talk about. We've developed enough goodwill over the years that people trust us. We got over 100 registrations in the first 24 hours. I think, in fact, it was the first 18 hours after we opened up registration, because we've got enough of a track record that people kind of trust us. But I think the big differentiator is, or a differentiator is, that we recognize that with the change in structure from in-person to Zoom, we've also had to change how we structure the event. And so it's all national folks, and we try to pick topics of general interest nationally instead of focusing statewide and regionally as we had done when it was on site. I don't think that's unique by any means. I think there are other events that do that. I think, if anything, I think the fact that we've shied away from having themes has actually been a strength for our event, because the difficulty I've seen historically when you have a theme is that people who are not interested in the theme don't attend, even if in practice some of the sessions would be valuable for them, and they would be excited to have attended them. They look at the theme and they say, well, that theme is not of interest to me, therefore I'm not going. So we've avoided that because we don't want to chase people off. But what's our big differentiator? I don't know. We keep it pretty loosey-goosey. I guess that's a differentiator. We don't try and lock things down. There isn't a big process associated with this. We just try and recruit people who are reputed to be interesting and exciting speakers and have names and or position titles that would draw people in. That's about it.
Thanks, Henry. So you talked about challenges of switching to a hybrid kind of organizing hybrid event. I had like a generic question for all the audience, I guess. How do you perceive attending hybrid events over like just purely online event or purely in-person event? Like what is your preference, or how do you pick which is the most appropriate? Like what are your thought processes? If you, and I'm certainly eager to hear everyone else. And yeah, go ahead, Dana.
I've given this a little bit of thought. I mean, this will come as no surprise to anyone, right? The in-person, you get the hallway conversations that are hard to do virtually. But virtual ones, you get to be more inclusive, right? Because people can come without having to travel, all of those kinds of things. So ideally you do both, but then the organizer, so Catherine, the CASC meeting was actual hybrid, and do you want to speak to like how much extra effort that is to either what pure virtual versus pure in person? Because that's, I mean, ideally we could do both all the time, but it's so much work and expensive.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, because I even with what we had for this meeting, I wanted it to be a little bit more, well, I mean, there's that difference between the webinar-based Zoom and the audience participation-based Zoom. We wanted more audience participation. However, we couldn't highlight a single speaker whenever there was, there's limitations. So, and you do miss that whole, I mean, we've decided to do both because we do want to make sure that members have an opportunity, even if they can't travel. And as you know, even now, with the packed schedules, a lot of, well, everyone has, we really have to, some are taking breaks in between meetings in case they catch something. So it's, it's this balancing act. And then, someone gets sick in your family, and then how can you participate? So we really, we want to keep as flexible as possible. But as you said, Dana, it can get pretty expensive.
So I know EDUCAUSE has a different approach, like they split out the virtual event and the in-person event into different events altogether. So it gives opportunity. So is that kind of the approach then from organizing point of view? Is that more efficient? Like, I know we have EDUCAUSE folks also online, so maybe they have some comments on that.
I can comment on it, but I might invite others that know a little bit more. There was another week online component that I didn't participate in. I just wasn't able to because of time. So the content was different, right? Like I don't know if anything was repeated. So I'm not sure what I think about that format. I know there's some other groups in the research data world that have tried that approach as well, like iAssist, and they'll have 1 week it's in person and then 1 week that's virtual, and sometimes pre-recorded things that would be at both. So I don't know. Jackie, do you know how EDUCAUSE did the online component this year?
Yeah, they've tried to do a separate or hybrid, but they now do the online component completely separate, because it's just too much work to do hybrid, especially with a big conference like that.
Any other event that anyone wants to mention that we might have missed?
Is there anybody here who goes to the Coalition for Networked Information, CNI meetings?
I do. Sorry, I'm eating my lunch.
Sorry, Stephen. As soon as you take a bite, you're likely to be called on, right?
Yeah. So I attend CNI periodically. I think each institution gets like 2 invited folks, and then if you're presenting, that's an addition. So generally my library director and an AUL will attend. I think I'm going to be going this December. So they have a fall meeting in December, and then they have I guess it's a winter in the spring, and it's always DC in December, and then West Coast or mid US for the spring meeting. I really enjoy that. I think folks here would get some benefit out of it as well if you're able to attend. You'll get a lot of really library specific types of conversations happening, but they are, talking about challenges with big data and storage and infrastructure needs. I feel like more and more of that's happening in the past few meetings I've attended. So I don't know if you have any other specific questions, but I would encourage folks, if you get the opportunity, to attend.
Yeah, I used to really like going to CNI, and again, had to come up with a presentation so that I could go, because again, our UL and somebody else would generally be the ones going. And I think you're right, kind of like what Jackie and you, Susan, talked about, the participation of C-level folks at EDUCAUSE. CNI is drawing a lot of the library leadership and the chance to understand better what challenges they're facing, just like you were talking about, how to learn more about that and how to think about, how are you going to build stronger ties, both at the level of your institution, but also at the level of our communities. And understanding what's going on in that library world. I thought that was really interesting. It's been a little while since I've been, and I know they also adjusted the format post-COVID, where they went to more pre-recorded sessions. Is there an in-person component again now, or?
There is. They started doing in-person. I think it was last spring, so last year, last calendar year, out in San Diego. I think it was the first in-person that was back. And then if Melissa's here, Melissa, I think you might have been at that one, but I can't remember, and I don't mean to call on you.
I was
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Great. And I think that was the first one back, right? Post-COVID.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And what they've been doing too are these pre-recorded roundtable events throughout the year now. So I don't think that they're doing like a second online component to their 2 meetings per year, though I could be wrong about that. But they've been doing these virtual and pre-recorded sort of sessions around topics, as I understand it.
And I
Agreed.
think
Yep.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I think that's right. There was a component early on that used to be part of the meeting, and they've made that now virtual. And so, as Susan said, it's spread out across the year.
Yeah, which I think is kind of interesting, you know, the whole idea of recording your talks and then having those posted. I know PERC experimented with, or I think it was PERC, with, you know, basically recording and then having the sessions just be Q&A, kind of like a flipped classroom approach. So it is one of the interesting things to come out of the pandemic, that we're experimenting both with, as was mentioned, the opportunity to be more inclusive with virtual components at the very least, if not fully virtual conferences, but also thinking about how do we do presentations and things like that. So
along those lines, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, interesting discussion. No, I just note that we're getting close to time.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, did you have
Yeah,
a question?
just a quick follow-up, back to CNI in particular, and that meeting. I mean, one of the benefits, I think, to CNI is that because Cliff Lynch is really sort of so central to the information and data aspect, he brings to the meeting there that the meetings actually highlight or illuminate intersections in ways that some of the other conferences don't. So just as an example from that meeting in San Diego, for me, one of the most interesting and significant panels was they brought in a data privacy officer and a university chief data officer, and they talked about the difference between those roles and what that means for data and information on campus. And then secondly, some new kinds of things tend to get exposed there that you might not see always at other conferences unless it's a specific paper. So there was a big discussion with the university librarian from Carnegie Mellon, where they've instituted an automated chem and bio, core lab. And so discussing how the data, how that setup works and the data flows, which I don't see a lot of times at other meetings. So it's really, so CNI does offer a really interesting intersection. So I would agree from that side that if you're looking from a college or university landscape piece, it's a really nice addition. So sorry, that was long-winded, but just wanted to add that.
Yeah, it's great to hear all the endorsements of that. I always love that conference. Cliff was actually also an adjunct at Berkeley, and so I get the chance to see him at Friday seminars there. And if you haven't heard him do one of his synthesis of observations talks, they're amazing. Really, really interesting. If you are interested in that, usually the membership is through your university library, and so you want to talk to folks there if you're trying to figure out how to engage with CNI and whether there's an opportunity to go. So I think with that, we should probably wind it up.
Yeah. I think we are at the top of the hour. So thank you everyone for attending, and thanks to all the speakers for bringing their experience and sharing their experience. I think next month we have a great exciting call about rapid expansion that Jackie had at Northwestern, and we also have another speaker. I'm going to talk about their expansion. So that's going to be exciting. So I hope to see everyone on the next call. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to Patrick or I.
Nope.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.